you help me with my makeup?
Who is she?
Who?
The girl I'm beating your face for.
One of the things that I noted in the episodes that I've seen that I loved is the fact that it is kind of the gay straight alliance that brings a lot of our characters together. And as Chester pretty bluntly notes, it's like, isn't that kind of like an old school idea? But I love that still is kind of this uniting force for everyone. So maybe you could kind of tell me a little bit about when that came into play and why that felt like what you wanted to bring everyone together with.
Yeah, definitely. So I was actually in the my school's version of the GSA, which was called like the Rainbow Alliance. My school's a very open and accepting place, but it still meant so much to me when I was in high school to have like a space that was specifically for queer kids. I don't know, that meant a lot to me, having kind of like my queer family all in one place, like once or twice a week whenever we decided to meet. Yeah, it was really great to just kind of have all my queer siblings in one space. And I think we wanted to reflect that with the show. It's like, it's so incredibly important to have spaces that are specifically queer. As long as heteronormativity is around, I think that will be important. And so that was something we kind of wanted to, while the concept of a GSA is essentially a bit binary and restricting, it can still be very important to have these spaces that are open for queer people across all spectrums.
It's funny because we make a joke about GSA, Gay Straight Alliance, and how it does feel kind of like 90s and binary. But then Zelda, I think you were telling me, right, that now it is being reclaimed as a gender and sexuality alliance, right?
Yeah, now a lot of people are using gender and sexuality alliance as the like base for the acronym.
So yeah. GSA has reinvented itself.
Another detail that I love from the show that I had to shout out is just that, like, how often do we actually see people type out a text? Like, we never do, but in the show it happens, and I have to applaud the way that the show portrays social media and our time on our phones. I think it feels very real, very realistic. So I wondered if you could talk to me a little bit about like why that felt important to you to portray
First
that
of all, can I just say you're our favorite person right now? The amount of time and energy and people work and hours that went into all of that is was really important to Zelda and everybody that is involved in the show. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
I mean, the thing is, we
absolutely.
felt like social media is like the language of Zelda and her friends, and we had to speak in that language. And so when we were very first conceiving of the show and thought about it, looked around for examples and see, you know, a lot of shows do super titles or whatever. But it's interesting because I think there is something that feels a bit distant about it. And for us, we really wanted to just be as immersive and authentic feeling as we could. And so for us, that meant you need to see them on their phones, and you need to see them typing the text, and then you need to, and then the challenge was sort of how to make that feel cinematic and dynamic. And so we talked a lot about, well, let's build in camera moves, and let's have people walking along and texting so that you can see a moving background, or you can tilt up from somebody's phone to their face. And so you feel like there's kind of a dynamic cinematic thing. So, but it is an enormous technical challenge, and it is really, really, really sweet of you to point it out, because we've worked really hard on.
Maybe, Ben, it was you that had just mentioned that, you know, it was really important to use Zelda to portray it this way. Can you talk a little bit about that? Why did it feel so important?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think it's important to just see kids using their phones the way kids really use their phones. Yeah, like Daniel said, a lot of shows use like words popping up next to a character's head, which I think it looks really cool in a lot of instances, but since the point of our show is kind of authenticity, I definitely think that like in real life, you obviously don't see letters appearing next to people's heads. You just see them looking at their phones. So we really wanted to kind of keep that alive. And another big thing is just, we wanted to like look at social media and texting and digital communication in a non-judgmental way, in the most non-judgmental way possible. And the best way to do that felt like it was just to portray it as it is. And so that was kind of our goal.
The word was non-judgmental. Like, that was very key to Zelda, was to make sure that social media, she often feels that it can be represented as like the curse or the bad thing or something, and she really wanted to portray it as like something that is sometimes bad and sometimes amazing, particularly for queer kids who can find community in social media.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that it's easy to be like, oh, well, it's so isolating if you're just only looking at your phone. But what the show really shows is that there's so many instances where you're looking at something on your screen and you're showing your friends, and all the friends gather around the phone to look at it. Like, you don't see that often on TV, but thankfully in the show, we get those moments. And it's like, yeah, I get that. I see that all the time.
It's also amazing because this is the generation really that grew up their phones are just a part of who they are. It's everything that they do, every part of every day. So good and bad.
Zelda, you've talked a little bit about, drawing from your own experiences, and we talked about the Rainbow Coalition, but Daniel and Ben, are we seeing elements of your high school experiences of this reflected in some way?
Well, to some extent, yes. To some extent, no. I think that it's obviously very different to be queer right now than it was, for us when we were growing up. And there were just so many narratives of shame and secrecy and guilt, that were surrounded it when we were kids. And while some of those are true now, for sure, there's also a kind of a naturalness and a boldness and a courageousness, and there are characters who can walk through the world, and they can be queer and a whole lot of other things in addition. And I think that one of the great joys, honestly, for me personally, of just working on the show is this kind of wish fulfillment. And when we're writing these characters and we're writing these scenes, I think, my God, if I had been able to walk through the world, the way that some of these characters, the way that Chester can walk through the world, it would have been so inspiring and amazing. So there's definitely a strong wish fulfillment there.
Zelda, I'm curious, what is something you would say you've learned about your fathers working on this show?
I think just seeing the way they work has been very interesting. The way they kind of run a set and the way they work together and as a team and the way they work with others. It's just something I don't feel like most parent-child relationships, I don't feel like you often get to see each other in action. So that's been really special to kind of see and like draw inspiration from their work ethic and just how they accomplish it.
Let's learn about ourselves, and from now on, let's just get it right.
You ready?
Miss you around.